You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 44. This podcast is dedicated to circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey friends, fans, and enemies. I'm Shannon McKenna, and I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. So this week's recording is coming to you from Siem Reap, Cambodia. I have this bucket list thing to see the original 7 wonders of the world. It's just like something I've always wanted to do since I was a little girl. One of them is in Cambodia. It's called Angkor Wat, and it's a huge temple. So I posted on my stories on my Instagram stories, I was going to Cambodia, and Mel, I guess. I don't really know your real name. I only know you from Instagram. But I love you. Mel lives in Phnom Penh, which is the capital of Cambodia. She DM'd me and she was like, if you are going to Cambodia, you have to go see this circus there. It's called the Phare Circus, and it's incredible. And I was like, cool. Yeah, for sure. So I messaged them and I pretended to be way more important than I am. And I somehow scored an interview with their marketing director. I think he was one of the few native English speakers who was working at the Phare Circus. His name's Craig Dodge, and he's my guest today. I met up with Craig before the show, and we were sitting right outside the tent. So just like last week with Chloe's interview, I had no control over the noise or the environment I was in at all, which I really hate. It's really difficult for me. I love listening to podcasts, and I hate it on podcasts when the sound is weird or distracting or it's hard to hear. Derek, my sound editor, and I work really hard to try to get you guys the best sound quality we possibly can. But this is a really small production, and I just really wanted to get the interview with Craig. So I know that there are parts of this interview that are distracting. It's still an amazing interview. I promise this won't be a forever condition. And if it's really bugging you, but you still want the information, as always, you can email me, info@theartistathlete.com, and I will provide a transcript to you. And we don't transcribe the background noise when we do the transcripts. That would be really silly. Instead of talking about Craig's background, he talks about that a bit in the interview, I wanted to give y'all the historical context for this circus. So talk a bit about Cambodia. You hear in the interview I ask some clarifying questions because I hadn't done my research yet. I'm an acrobat, not a journalist, but I have done a little bit of research now. So here's the deal in Cambodian history according to Shannon. In 1975, 44 years ago, there was a political party in the Cambodian government, and it was called the Khmer Rouge. It was led by this total asshole named Pol Pot, and they came to power and basically overthrew everything. Pol Pot became the dictator, and the Khmer Rouge instilled, basically, they wanted a farming communist country. So everyone was stripped of their individual rights. They had no property, nothing. Virtually overnight, they evacuated all of the cities in Cambodia. They rounded up any professionals, academics, anyone who might pose a threat or speak against them. They tortured them and killed them. And it didn't stop there. In the 3 years the Khmer Rouge was in power, they killed estimates of over 20% of the Cambodian population. Now, the exact numbers vary from source to source, but most agree around 20%, or about 3 million people were killed in this time by the Khmer Rouge. Not only that, they eliminated all of the money, all the access to the free market, schools, transportation. They basically sent this entire nation back to the Stone Age. And the genocide didn't end until Vietnam invaded in 1979. And the Khmer Rouge actually didn't even surrender power over until 1999, which was 20 years ago. So if you want to read more about the history of Cambodia, poverty rates, all of that, I've included some links in the show notes, but I think it's important to understand that this country is still very much rebuilding. And despite all of this really depressing history, there's a circus. To tell you more about it, here's my interview with Craig Dodge. Craig Dodge.
Yes.
Welcome to the Artist Athlete Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Can you say a little bit in your own words who you are and what you do?
Okay. Well, I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Phare, the Cambodian Circus. The circus is a social enterprise extension of a nonprofit school from Battambang. The school's been around since 1994, providing free education, academic and artistic, to at-risk Cambodian youth. The principle of the school is art therapy primarily. The founders were refugees during the war, and while they were in the refugee camp, there was an art teacher from France that used drawing classes as therapy to help them get through the experience. After the war was over and the camps closed down, people kind of scattered. A lot of people went to Battambang because it's the closest city to the Thai border where the camp was located. And she went to find them. She got together with 9 of the guys, and together they opened the school with the principle of using art to heal the community. So it started with the drawing classes. They quickly realized that young kids can't sit still very long for drawing.
Yeah.
And so they decided to add some of the more active things like dance, music, theater, finally circus. The kids don't have to have talent to enter the school. They don't have to take a test. They can pick anything they want to do, pursue it for a little bit, change if they like, because at the end of the day, it's really about finding ways for them to express themselves.
Okay.
And healthy outlets for their energy.
Okay.
Where we came along in Siem Reap, to get back to your original question maybe, is the school did find that some of the students were developing some great talent. They were working very hard, becoming very talented, but in Cambodia, there's very few jobs, especially not in the arts and certainly not in circus. So the school started thinking, what can we do to give them a future, to give them something to work towards? So they came up with the idea of starting a business. They picked circus from the other arts because nobody else in Cambodia was doing it, and it would be fun.
Yeah.
And they picked Siem Reap instead of Battambang because there's more of a potential audience. Battambang's a bigger city, but it's very local. So they picked here because of the audience. So the circus, the business opened here in February of 2013. And at that time, I was working for a tour company, which is my background. I'm from the travel industry, airline, travel agent, tour operator. They came to my office and to do a sales call, and they invited me to the show. And I have to confess, I had a very stereotypical image of what circus was. I'll say very stereotypical American image, because every nationality certainly has their own. And I was a little reluctant to go because it just was kind of not something that intrigued me much. When I went to see it for the first time, I had such a strong gut reaction of, wow, I didn't expect that, that it made an impact on me. So when I had travel agent visitors coming, I always made sure that to include the circus as part of their itinerary. And it was really tough, I think, for the organization to start in the early days because the school had no budget. They didn't really understand how to connect with the tourism industry to develop the relationships with the travel agents, hotels, and whatnot. And that's my background. So when I was wrapping up at the tour company and going to head out of here back to Taiwan, which is sort of my home base, they asked me if I would stay and help them sell. So that's kind of where I came into this, in that they had kind of the performance artistic side down. It's not my background. I don't understand it. I can't do a somersault. I can't draw a stick figure, but I do know how to sell, and I do understand the tourism industry, and I understand media and generating word of mouth, and that was a perfect match. So that's kind of a long answer to your short question.
That's how you ran away to join the circus in Cambodia.
Isn't that weird?
That's incredible.
That is a weird, yeah.
I want to go back and ask a couple of questions, and if you can't answer them, I understand. I'm a little ignorant about Cambodian history.
Okay.
I haven't brushed up on it. There is not a refugee center currently in, how do you say it,
Bong?
Oh, Battambang.
Battambang.
Battambang. No, it's the second largest city of Cambodia. There isn't a refugee center that I'm aware of, no.
But the school is still there.
The school is still there,
and
it's very active. There's about 1,200 to 1,500 students a day there.
Oh, wow.
The number fluctuates a little bit because unlike the West, where we start and stop school at pretty much set ages, it's not quite that way at the moment in Cambodia, where a lot, especially in rural areas, there's still a lot of pressure for the kids to help the family make money. So maybe they work on the farm, maybe they help in shops, they need to do something to make money. So they aren't always able to go to school. So yeah, the school is very active.
And how do the kids find the school then? Because it's not a traditional school, it sounds like.
There is an academic section to it. So
cool.
It has academic, which would be similar to our K through 12, and then the artistic part. And the students can do either or both, and they can start and stop as they like. People find it's pretty established in the community now, since it's been there since 94. Most people in Battambang know about Phare Selpak. They also have an open days once a year, where for like 3 days there's just all kinds of activities going on. So the community can come, see what the programs are, experience it a little bit, and hopefully enroll their children into the school.
Very cool. Yeah. And who are the instructors who are teaching circus to
Right,
kids?
that's a really good question. The founders, many of the founders are still involved in teaching. Previous students are also, who have graduated that may not have really wanted to perform, are also there teaching. Or maybe they performed for a little while and they just decided they would rather teach. The school also has a social outreach program where they use performance art to educate. And so some of the performers stay there, they do the outreach programs and teach. The school also benefits from visiting artists who will volunteer their time to teach some of the techniques. So those are all ways that they get some teaching in.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you want to spend some time in Battambang.
Yeah, I would love to.
Hook you up.
Sounds so wonderful. I wish I'd known about it earlier. I totally would.
Yeah.
When I come back.
Sure.
For sure. So the kids who exhibit a talent and an interest then come to perform? Is there an audition, or how do they select the artists for the show?
That's another great question. Our mission here in Siem Reap is to provide jobs and to earn money for the school.
Yeah.
But to do that, the shows we can't quite be as flexible on the who comes and performs here as they can at the school, because there's a different expectation. So generally, how it's happened so far, we've only been here, it'll be six years. It's just 6 years. How it's happened is the students sort of go through this process at the school together, and they develop shows together, and they sort of polish it, and it evolves. And then it may be the kind of a show that can be successful at a more commercial setting like here.
Yeah.
And so, yes, what we would do is, like, when the students are graduating, then we would either go there or they come here and perform their show that we can see it. Usually by that time we've actually seen them, because sometimes we have some of the student groups who are nearing graduation performing here in the Big Top. So a lot of them we already know by then, so we know that if they're talented and dedicated.
Do you make those decisions as well, or is that more of an artistic?
I have a voice. I don't think it's as big as the other voices, but the thing about
your voice matters.
Yeah, I'm loud. Nobody listens, but no, it's pretty collaborative, and I think at the end of the day, we all want it to succeed. I mean, that's really what we're here for, and it's a learning process for all of us as well. Like I said, this is only our 6th year, and I come from a tourism background. Our organization's CEO is also from a tourism background, although he was a long time ago a student for a while at Phare.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So we all are sort of learning as we go, and we're trying to find best practices and how we can best serve the graduates of the school and also be successful as a business.
I was reading over there, it sounds like you offer more than just employment. You offer insurance. You offer all sorts of benefits to your artists.
It's we need to make sure that everybody is secure and healthy and well taken care of. And so it isn't just a job, but it's a well-paying job. A lot of performance artists in some of the settings, like around town, you'll see dinner dance show theaters, for example. Those dancers might only make like $5 a show. And I'm just taking that number. I don't have facts in front of me, so I don't want to say that that's for sure, but that's what I understand. So you can't live on that. Right. We make it a point that we pay our artists very well for each show that they perform in the Big Top, as well as performances. They can make even more when we do off-site performances, like at gala dinners, corporate events, and travel overseas. So the group that you're going to see tonight just got back from Marseille, France, for example. Awesome. Right. So they make good money there. But also the health insurance is a big part of it. We have on-site physiotherapists 7 days a week.
Wow.
And we get some volunteer physios and osteopaths and what's the word is escaping me. Homeopaths, yeah.
Those are people. Yep.
Right, but it's a profession, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's
yes.
right. So that they come and they share those skills with our on-site
that's incredible.
Physiotherapists to make sure that the artists are well taken care of, because it is it's very physical.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also we have to provide a lot of life skills and soft skill training, because for most of the artists, it's the first time they've ever been away from home. Their homes are in Battambang. When they come here to perform, we rent a villa, and that's where they stay. But to manage themselves, manage their lives,
sure.
Manage an income that they never had before. So we have like financial workshops.
Wow.
We have different like goal setting workshops and all kinds of things like that are more than just running the show.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
How much of that are you a part of, or do you just do the marketing?
Because I don't speak Khmer, I'm not a big part of a lot of that. I mean, gotcha. I kind of help organize some of it, or I'll make observations and I'll say, gee, I think everybody could benefit if we were working towards some of these goals, and then the people who can speak Khmer and who have more of the local resources put it together.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Where did the tent come from?
That's another good story.
I
love stories.
Yes,
I just have all
I love
kinds of
hearing
stories. No, it was when we first opened, or when Phare first opened, it was February of 2013. I didn't join them till September. So by September, there was actually already the Big Top. But
okay, so
in the
they
beginning,
opened in February.
Right.
So September they had the Big Top. So
right, a little bit, yeah. In July, I think they got it in the summertime. But Cambodia rains a lot. So in the beginning, you see those photo panels behind me,
yes.
sort of. Imagine those in a circle around an outdoor stage and plastic chairs.
Wow.
That was how it started. And the organization, the business was looking for a Big Top, and it was preparing to borrow the money for the Big Top. And there was a very generous woman from Switzerland that fell in love with the project and donated the Big Top.
Oh, wow.
So not to get too deep into the weeds about the corporate stuff, but the school is a nonprofit. It's organized as a nonprofit. The circus here in Siem Reap is a business. It's a profit-seeking business,
right.
But it's 75% owned by the school. And largely because of her donation of the Big Top, which was worth like $250,000, she donated it to the school, who then used it to open this business, which helped them have the majority share rather than just debt.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense.
I mean, it's kind of another long story to the short question, but it's a cool thing. I mean, it came from Switzerland, so it needed and still needs some adjustments to be suitable for this climate, because it's hot and humid all the time. Mm-hmm. That Big Top is not made to get rid of heat. It's meant to hold heat in. So
right.
So it's been tough for us to keep it cool, and especially hot months.
What are some strategies you use
to keep it cool?
Yeah.
Well, you can't see it from where we're sitting, but we cut off the top and basically raised it up so that the air could circulate through. We've got 8 master cool evaporative coolers inside and 12 aircon units. And even with all of that, it still can get warm in there.
I have seen posters all over town. So you're doing something very well. Like in my hotel, on the little door thing that's like, please make up our room.
Oh, they've got one of our door. Ah, okay.
Yeah, I saw it. I was like, wow, they're doing a great job. How do you do that?
Need. So just being responsive to the community. So just talking about the marketing in general.
Yeah.
It's primarily word of mouth. Okay, so in the beginning, when I first started, it was me walking around Old Market wearing a sandwich board.
Wow.
Because we just had no money and just trying to sort out what to do. And then
So you gave up your job in the tourism industry.
Yeah.
To put on a sandwich board and walk around the old market for a circus.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They kind of tapped me because they had a sales team that didn't know how to sell. It was because it's a new organization, a small social enterprise owned by a nonprofit school. It really can't afford to pay the salaries to attract experienced salespeople. So what they originally wanted me for was to just kind of help groom their salespeople. And then just the longer I stayed, the bigger the role became. And then it took, besides selling, it took marketing, which is not my background. And a lot of people will say sales and marketing as if it's one word, but it really isn't.
Sure,
And it's been a learning curve for me to figure it out, but how to get the word out. And so like to go to those door hangers, it was just basically working with small boutique hotels, and we're asking them, what can we do to help you sell our tickets? And it was one of the small boutique hotels that just said, hey, it would be really cool is if you guys could produce some door hangers and you can brand it. And, just on one side, it'll say, do not disturb. The other side, it'll say, make up the room.
Yeah.
So that's how
That's awesome.
That's how that got started.
What do you think has been the biggest success you've had with the Phare Circus in the time you've been with them?
In terms of like a specific event or just in general, what?
Let's go with a specific event to start.
Probably, what I get tickled by is maybe different than what other people find, but there are a couple things that really stick out to me as memorable. One of them was in the very early days. I remember after the show, somebody came up to me and said, wow, do you guys perform off-site? And I said, yeah. And she said, have you ever heard of Song Sa Private Island? And I said, of course. And she said, well, are you available at Christmas?
Wait,
and I
what
said,
is
certainly.
Song Sa? I don't know what that is.
Okay, so Song Sa Private Island is exactly that. It's a private island resort off the coast of Sihanoukville. Okay. There are these they were deserted small rocks that this Australian couple bought. Okay. And they used just only upcycled local stuff to build a uber luxury resort that's environmentally responsible.
Cool.
They also have their own marine preserve that they manage and pay for. They help the adjacent island. But anyway, it's a cool. I think it's a cool organization, and it also was probably one of the most high-profile at the time resorts in the whole country. So it was quite an honor to be asked. And I think what made it especially memorable for me was some of the things we take for granted. We forget how it might not be so easy for other people. So, for example, you would think in Cambodia, it's a country with a coastline that most Cambodians would have seen the ocean. In fact, not. When I take groups down there, at least a handful of them have never seen the ocean. So it's the very first time in their life they ever got to see the ocean. So for me, it's just like, wow, it's not just about their job. It's not just about earning a good income, but it's also about having life experiences that they might not have otherwise had. That was kind of important to me, and it's symbolic of what Phare represents, I think, to a lot of the artists, is creating opportunities that didn't exist before. So as a professional artist, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so did you imagine when you were younger that that's what you wanted to do when you grew up?
That I wanted to be a circus artist?
Or a performing artist, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, I always knew I was going to be on stage.
So you kind of had that in your mind.
Yeah.
I think in Cambodia, that's not, until recently, that really was not the thinking. I think a lot of Cambodia is still in survival mode, and they're thinking about what can I do to earn money to eat today. So a lot of the performers hadn't gone into it thinking they wanted to be a performer when they grew up. I think times are changing because these performers' younger siblings and the other people in their villages are seeing that it is possible now. But for these guys, largely it was just like opportunity, creating an opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise had. So it changes their mindset about life, what they can do, what are the possibilities. So I think that trip to Sihanoukville sort of also made me realize that this is an opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise had, is to see the ocean and to go to a resort that's like lifestyles of the rich and famous, ride on a James Bond powerboat to get out there. It's
that's
just really
incredible.
different than what people realize.
How very cool.
Yeah.
When the artists finish their contracts with the circus, what do they do?
Well, we're a pretty young organization, so I can't say. I mean, the contracts are pretty open-ended. As long as they enjoy performing, as long as they do the job that's available to them.
Okay.
Some artists have, or some of the performers have decided, gee, there were some other things in life they wanted to do that they didn't think were possible until they had this chance to realize anything's possible. So one decided he wanted to be a chef. He went to work at, or he got enrolled in a culinary school. He got a internship at Raffles, and now he's a chef. He never imagined that was possible until this. Another one, one of the musicians wanted to be an accountant, which to me was kind of a like, wow.
Yeah, right.
Right brain, left brain, but he wanted to be an accountant. And, I don't think he ever imagined he could do that. I'm assuming a lot, but I don't think he imagined he could do that. And now he's been in our accounting office ever since. So, that kind of thing. Now, that's not to say that some don't go on to bigger performing careers. So we had 2 graduates from the school that went to the National Circus School of Montreal on scholarship from Phare. And one of them got picked up in a permanent Cirque du Soleil show. So he's in Volta now.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, who knows what path they're going to take. But the point is that in their minds, those paths were never even there.
Yeah,
before
totally.
This. So it's exciting to see.
Well, and it's a departure from what I'm used to hearing from communist countries who have a circus culture in them, which is that it's kind of state-run and you work for the state and you're entirely, like, your career is dictated by the state.
Right.
Whereas it sounds like here, because it's a business or a private organization, they have a little bit more freedom. You're just helping them to direct their lives.
Right. So the government doesn't get involved. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not a thing in Cambodia.
Yeah.
So in one aspect, you can say they are free to choose whatever they want, but in the reality, that they may not feel they have those choices just because of trying to survive.
Absolutely. Economically.
Right. And then culturally, too, I think, and most countries can kind of relate to the starving artist thought. And it takes on a whole new meaning in Cambodia. But a lot of parents will just try to discourage their children from this because they don't see a future in arts. And these are stories that I have a hard time telling without crying. So you might have to forgive me for that. But
no worries.
Like there's one artist. He's not in this show. He's in one of the other shows. But he left home to do this. So he is one of the few that actually this is what he wanted to do. He wanted to perform, but his parents were not real supportive of it. But he's like, I'm going to do this, and he left home, and he hadn't seen them for quite a while, and he graduated, and the show that he's in, we were basically bringing out of hibernation for a while. It went to the Ringling Arts Festival in Sarasota, Florida, about 4 years ago now. And then it was sort of on hiatus, and then now it's back with some new artists. He's one of them. And we invited his family. And so it was our 5th anniversary, and we had a big top full of mostly friends, people in the community that knew us and knew a lot of the artists. And our CEO started telling the story, and he just suddenly froze, and tears started streaming down his face. And then Dara called his parents down.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
It was just, that's a very powerful thing that he felt strongly about it. He made his life a success, and he can show his parents, I can do it, and look at me. this is great. And everybody, 350 people were crying. It was really powerful.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible.
Yeah. And then there's another artist. He's a visual artist. He's a painter. And I arranged an interview with him in the Toronto Star. And something he said that just really ripped my heart out was he never imagined in his life he could do anything but follow buffalo, follow cows, which is like a euphemism for being a farmer. He really never felt he would have any other opportunity. But he also decided to pursue his dream. His parents were somewhat supportive of it. His dad heard about Farpalnu Selpak and that it was free, and so he went there, and so now he's a visual artist, and he had his first solo exhibit at the Aviary Hotel about a year and a half ago.
Wow.
Huge success. Sold almost every piece. He's got pieces now at Malice Restaurant, and the first one sold after just 2 weeks hanging in the restaurant. And his parents can see, like, yeah, he can do this, and it's a option now that I don't think anybody thought it was before.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's hard. It's really hard for us to imagine. I mean, because I think when we're growing up, we think the world is our oyster and we can do anything we want. But in Cambodia, I don't.
Oh yeah, and totally. And the
that's
starving artist
case.
thing. I mean, that rebellious thing that you do, where you're like, well, I did when I was like, I'm going away to join the circus, Mom and Dad. You can't tell me what to do. You know, like it didn't carry that kind of weight.
Right.
Like
they're like, okay, send me a postcard.
Like, ugh, yeah, all right, whatever. Don't ask us for money.
Yeah. Well, and for women here, it's even harder, I think, because of the cultural...
This was going to be one of my questions, was how do you... Because in a lot of the promotional materials, a lot of the things I see, it's mostly men.
Yeah. Well, it's for cultural reasons, not for lack of trying.
Sure.
And there is opportunity, but especially for a acrobat or contortionist or something like that, where you have to put your body in positions that would not be normal, or would or have somebody catch you or hold you or touching you in a way that culturally is kind of still shocking here in such a conservative culture. So there, even above and beyond that resistance we're talking about towards arts in general as not being a practical thing for them to do. For women, it's even harder. So the women who are at Phare are pioneers. I mean, they really are pioneers in the circus industry in Cambodia.
Is there anything that you do especially for them to encourage or support them?
Well, a lot of that starts at the school, so that's really before they get here. Once they're here, they're already in.
Yeah,
so
they're
it's
already
really,
badasses.
You know, we do try as a business. We try to make sure that we have all the opportunities possible, and I think you're seeing a little bit more of it at the school, but I would encourage you to take a side trip to Battambang if you're...
I want to now
because
so badly.
The school is open for visitors, and I think it's really it's a completely different experience than coming from here, to see where it all began, to see where the younger artists are doing their training, and see how it's different from the way we look at the training, probably, in that it's really more about an outlet, an expression, than it is actually let's get professional right away.
That makes me think culturally about this issue of, you say they wanted to come to Siem Reap because it's a tourist kind of location, and I'm interested in how you kind of deal with appealing to a tourist audience, which is different than culturally where Cambodians come from.
That's a really great question.
Is that question yet?
It's a great question, and I would say if there is any disagreement of opinion or differing of opinion, it's usually on that topic.
Oh,
because
interesting.
From my perspective, I'm looking at what is going to attract the audience.
Right.
What the school is maybe looking at is more, and let me be very clear, these performances were not created for tourists. This is the least touristic thing you're going to do the whole time you're in Siem Reap. The performances were created by Cambodians for Cambodians, with the idea of using the art as a way to express or to get over something difficult. And it does show up in the performances. And I think that's one of the things that sets it apart, that the audience does connect with, because there's an authenticity and a real character that you sense. I mean, I don't think we fully understand it, but we sense it's there. So when we do have Cambodian audience, which we do, during low season, we might only sell half the tickets. The other half of the tickets we give away to local Khmer, to the rural villagers who wouldn't have been able to afford it otherwise.
Cool.
We want them to experience it and to see that, yes, they can do this. And that's another thing that it gives me goosebumps. When Cambodians after the show will say to me, wow, we can do that. And that is just so loaded with so much emotion to me that they didn't think that they could. And when we bring different NGO groups and whatnot, and it's being explained to them, they make it very clear that these shows are created by the Cambodians themselves. That whatever influence there is from the outside, it's usually just to help them stage what is essentially their idea, their core idea. It is a challenge. No, it's not so much a challenge. I want to take that back.
Yeah.
No, I think what Phare does best is just be Phare. And I think where we have made mistakes in the past is by trying to create something that is not really from their heart and have them do it. So I can share with you, for example, there was a project that they tried to do with a group from India, and it was very Bollywood style.
Okay.
And it was just, it didn't work, okay, at the end of the day. And it's just sort of reiterates that, just let the artists, let Phare be Phare, let them create from their heart. And they're very open to hearing other opinions. Like sometimes we'll have a little debrief after the show, and if I do give feedback, I make it very clear that this is just from the audience perspective. You guys do with it what you think is best. But yeah, we don't want it to be commercial, but it has to be appealing.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And you have to market it no matter what it is.
Yeah, which, that's not been a challenge. I mean, really what they do is really fabulous. But what is happening, like the show you're going to see today is quite a bit different from the other shows in that most of the other shows are high energy, more high energy from my perspective. Okay, maybe the artists see it differently, I don't know. But from my perspective, the other shows have a little bit more acrobatic, a little bit more applause lines during the show. The show that you'll see today, White Gold, is much more poetic and visually aesthetic and cultural, and a message there about traditional culture and family values coming in conflict with pressures of modern society. So it's different. So for me to try to manage expectations and help people understand what they're going to see before they see it is harder and harder. If artistic is going to go in different directions like that.
Right,
Because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that the customer's expectation is exceeded.
Right,
Because that's really what's made Phare a success. Our customers, guests that have had such a great experience that they just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
People come here and say, I was at a hotel in Bangkok and told a friend I was coming to Siem Reap, and they said, you got to see Phare. And that just tickles me that people are still talking about it into their journeys or on TripAdvisor.
Oh, totally. No, the way I found out about you guys was through Instagram. I have kind of a large Instagram following, and a couple of people messaged me and were like, you have to go see this show.
Yeah, so that makes my job easier.
Yeah. Happy to help.
And it was interesting because, like I said, I'm a salesperson, not a marketing person, and I've learned the hard way that those are different things. And I used to do the speech after the show. There will be a brief speech that gives a little background about the project and how people can help if they want to. And after the speech one night, a woman, she was from San Francisco, turned out to be, she was a marketing professional. And she was so polite. I thought, you're so kind. Oh, your speech was so great, but you missed something. And I said, what was that? And she said, you didn't ask people to talk about you. People had a good time. They just need you to tell them what the next step is. So, then I worked it into the speech where, when you go to Pub Street tonight, talk about Phare. When you're at breakfast at your hotel tomorrow morning, talk about Phare, or different things like that. And I don't want to say that was really transformational, but word of mouth has been the biggest marketing success. And it's not because of what I do, it's because what they do is so different and unique and special. Audiences connect with it on a personal level. And all I have to do is facilitate that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Do you find that different audiences or different cultures respond to it differently? Like French people versus people from the US versus people from...
Very much so. Because to begin with, every nationality has their own perception of what circus is.
Yeah,
so
that was my thought.
For example, like Australia has a long history of cultural artistic circus. So I would say of most of the nationalities who come here, Aussies get it more than others. Americans tend to think it's about red nose, fuzzy hair. So they're resistant to coming at first, but they're so pleasantly surprised that they actually leave feeling pretty good about it. Chinese are used to very enormous, epic, big budget performances with technical perfection. So they may be disappointed because this is not that. This is grassroots, gritty, earthy character personality. It's not about budget. It's not about laser lights. So yeah, everybody does have difference. But beyond that, then there comes different storylines where we have one story, for example, that's quite modern and progressive. The setting is... The artists, what they felt was most people know Khmer Rouge. They know Angkor Wat.
Yeah.
They know generally what poverty is. How can we share with people our lives as modern urban Cambodian youth? So they created a show set in a place they'd be likely to go, which is a grungy rock bar, grungy Phnom Penh rock bar. And everything that would probably happen in that rock bar sort of happens in the show, expressed artistically. It's a bar. Okay, what happens in a bar? People get drunk. People hook up. There's petty theft. I mean, in a Cambodian bar. So not just certain nationalities will react different to that, but if you're culturally conservative, you might react differently to that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And today's show is not at all any of that. It's very cultural. It's very beautiful. So if you're looking for that edge, you might react differently to it.
Yeah. And do you do anything like for certain holidays? Does the billing of the shows play into that, or do you just put it out as the artists create it?
That's a good question. And no, we probably should. Like we don't do holiday shows, okay? That it just
well, right, because I mean, Christmas is probably not a thing.
Right. Here. Or we did have one show. It was called Chills, which was one of my favorite. Asians believe in ghosts a lot more than Western culture. Cambodians to the nth degree.
Really?
So they created this show called Chills, which was about a bunch of these high school age kids coming in contact with ghosts and overcoming their fear of ghosts. It was one of the best shows I'd ever seen. And it just, we happened to schedule that one year on Halloween. But that was just coincidence. So it matched perfectly. But other than that, no. That being said, however, we did kind of learn this year that it's probably best not to schedule Khmer Metal, the bar show, on a time when a lot of families with young kids are traveling. Because as much as I disagree, I mean, I don't think it's anything that you wouldn't see on primetime TV. To be sensitive to guest reaction, then that would be a holiday scheduling consideration. I love the show. It's one of my favorite shows. And that's the show that Ringling picked when they took us to their arts festival in Sarasota.
Oh, wow.
And that was another interesting story if you wanted to go back to some of the big
I would love
stories.
To hear
but that was when they contacted us. We didn't contact them. Yeah, it was... one year they were going to do an Asia theme, and they contacted the Asian Cultural Council in New York, and they said, who should we bring? And they said, well, Phare should be on your list. So they contacted us. We sent them our list of shows, and they looked it over, and they said, we want this one. And I'm thinking, really? And, because...
they hadn't seen any of them or anything?
Well, they'd seen the pictures. They had seen video clips. They read the synopsis. So it wouldn't have been a mystery, exactly. So, they said that's the one they wanted. But I'm thinking two things. One, Ringling is the red nose, fuzzy hair image to me. Mm-hmm. And Sarasota is, I'm thinking it's retirees and probably more conservative people. So, opening night, I remember walking around with a front of house manager, and he was thinking, wow, I think we're all set. Do you think we need anything? And I said, yeah, a defibrillator, because as soon as this show starts, I saw people on oxygen. I saw people with walkers. This is a wild show. I thought, okay. But it was huge. It was a huge hit. So it was where I was totally wrong about who the audience would be. Even though Sarasota is quite famous for maybe retirement area, but it also was the home of Ringling, so there's generations of circus artists there.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just didn't really put that together. My mistake.
Cool. Where do you see Phare Circus going next? Sorry, I wanna ask a few more questions, but I also want to wrap up because I know we've got a show.
That is a really good question, and we also struggle. So I will be very candid and very honest. I'm a cautious person. I think I don't want to ruin what makes Phare special, which is the intimacy, the small venue, we try to find a balance between very grassroots and authentic, and meet an expectation of what the audience is going to want. They're going to expect a little bit more polish. Some people come expecting Cirque du Soleil, and I really don't get it, because if you look at any of the material, it's really not that.
Right, I mean, and the tickets are $18, which
it's
expensive for Cambodia, but not from Cirque du Soleil.
But it's really not. If you go to other live performances of roughly the same duration, we're actually average or even a little bit low.
Oh, nice.
So there's...
Obviously, I've done no market research whatsoever on this.
Well, nor have most of our customers, because we do get a lot of people that do make that comment. So we have a post-performance survey that is on iPads after the show. You can please do a survey. And one of the questions is, how did you feel about the ticket price? Too expensive, just right, or a bargain? 80% or more say just right. And then the other 10 and 10 say it's too cheap or too expensive. So it is whatever. But on TripAdvisor, people will say it's high priced for Cambodia, but it isn't, first of all. If you go to other performances of the similar duration, we are right average or maybe even a little bit lower. you compare it to anywhere else in the world, forget about it.
Oh,
There
yeah,
is no comparison. But Cambodia isn't about 50-cent beers anymore. You know, a lot of people come thinking that it's really just about pub street and go have a 50-cent beer and $1 foot massage or something. And it's like, if that's what you're here for, you're really going to miss 99% of what makes Cambodia great, which are authentic experiences like this, not created for tourist experiences like that.
Totally. So my question is, how do you grow, or I guess your question too is, how do you grow it, or where is it going?
You know, we do have a mission of providing jobs to the graduates of the school, which aren't just the circus artists. So we are trying to find other ways to create jobs. So we do have a graphic design and animation studio now that's located in Battambang, but it falls under our umbrella. We're exploring something similar to what you mentioned in Berlin, but doing it in Phnom Penh, but that's still in the exploratory phase. We also just recently bought the land behind us here, and we plan to expand and create like an arts center, you know, because right now there aren't a lot of places people can go in Siem Reap, and there are a lot of small arts groups that maybe they have a small space, but maybe everybody could benefit if there were an arts village that visitors could come to and find a lot of different things in one area. So that kind of thing is happening. We're also trying to find more overseas performing opportunities, which is tough. When we approach, or when we've had discussions with organizations in other countries, a lot of it revolves around the cost. And other countries, as limited as it is, the governments still have some kind of budget often to support arts organizations. There isn't here. So, and it costs a lot of money to take a circus troupe and some equipment to another country. So it's really hard to find those opportunities, but we hope to do more of that.
Yay, I'm excited for you guys. And for yourself personally, we were kind of talking about this earlier. Do you see yourself continuing in Cambodia, or are you going to hit the 7-year itch?
Yeah, I do actually. In the beginning, you know, when they first asked me, could I help, it was really, in my mind, and I think in theirs, it was just going to be, let me help coach their team to get them up to speed on what selling in the travel industry means. But then as I stayed and we grew and grew, and then my responsibilities grew, and actually my satisfaction grew as well. So I've taken on a bigger role while the sales team sort of grows into their selling. Then they couldn't find anybody to do marketing, and I said, well, it's not really my strength, but I'll learn. Yeah, let me try.
Cool.
And my brother has done it his whole life, so I spent hours and hours on the phone with him in the early days to try to get ideas, and I think he's shaped that a lot.
Nice.
But yeah, I do like it. And as I said earlier, I have no artistic sensibility. I have no artistic talent in the conventional sense. Some people will say selling is an art.
I think so. I think marketing is very creative.
All right, thank you. That's very gracious of you. But what I do feel and what makes me happy is doing what I do helps them do what they do. I don't have to know how they do what they do. All I have to do is create opportunities for them to do it, and make sure the Big Top is as full as it can be, and find the private events around Cambodia, and facilitate other work opportunities. And then I feel good. I think I made a difference in somebody's life. I didn't teach them their skill. I can't do their skill, but I can create opportunities. So that fits. It makes me feel good. It seems to work. It's what the organization needs. So yeah, I'm staying.
Sweet. I'm sure they're happy to have you. Keep staying. Oh yeah, for sure. My last question, which you kind of answered, I feel like, in that question, but I always ask it to every guest, so I'm going to ask it to you. Okay. Which is, what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Oh, plan better.
Oh.
That's an easy... I think my
better. Yeah. But how could you possibly have planned?
My gut instinct is to just jump in feet first and do stuff.
Me too.
We could have saved a lot of growing pains if I would have planned things out in my own department better. So, for example, like the online ticket sales. Actually, Phare is a pioneer for that in Cambodia. We were the first, that I'm aware of, the first organization in Cambodia that was able to accept credit card payments online. Other organizations that did, the payments had to go to other countries, and then they would have to, because Cambodia didn't have that solution.
Right.
But we were just sort of in the right place at the right time, the very first bank that offered it, and we were approached by an online booking service provider at roughly the same time. We made it happen. But my mistake was I just started putting stuff in there without really thinking how it should look ahead of time. And then we also use Salesforce to manage our data for accounts. And I did the same thing. I mean, it's like, okay, let's just install this and let me just start setting things up without really looking at how to do it.
Interesting.
And I think it could have helped the organization better if I were not so gung-ho.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for
It's my pleasure.
coming on the show.
That was my interview with Craig Dodge of the Phare Circus. I walked into this interview thinking, okay, here's this American guy. We'll probably talk about marketing and business structures of not-for-profit companies in third world or developing nations. I was really surprised that this evolved into this incredibly touching conversation about mindset and art as a means of helping people realize what they can really do, and creation as a form of healing on a pretty large scale. Like, this isn't just some bad middle school poetry I used to write to get over some boy that had broken my heart. We're talking about an entire nation healing after a genocide. And the way that this generation is healing, or one of the ways, is through opportunities in the arts, which seems almost counterintuitive, you know? Like, I can just hear doubters saying, oh, but these kids should learn math or get access to technology because education is really the way out of poverty. But what that argument fails to realize is that how can you learn if you don't believe you're capable of learning? Or if you think your whole life has to revolve around subsistence agriculture because that's how you were raised, because your parents came from a time where you were either a farmer or you were literally killed. And then you have someone who comes along and teaches you to stand on your hands, or how to throw 3 balls in the air and catch them, or do a backflip. And all of a sudden, these things that didn't initially seem possible, all of a sudden are for you. You're the one doing it. You're the mover. You're the creator. And if that's possible, then maybe education is possible. Maybe the job that you really want is. And that's the real power of art and of social circus. And on top of the amazing productions, that's what makes the Phare Circus so special. If you want to learn more about the Phare Circus, donate to the school, or find volunteer opportunities, you can visit their website. It's Phare Circus. That's PHARE circus.org. And as for me, as usual, one thing Craig did mention about marketing that I feel like I don't do enough on this podcast is I don't tell anybody to tell people about my podcast. So friends, fans, and enemies, if you are loving what you're listening to each week, find your favorite friend, fan, or enemy who loves circus and podcasts, or just circus, or just podcasts, and tell them about this one. You can also help out the podcast by subscribing, rating, and reviewing it. If you want to get in touch with me, I am at www.theartistathlete.com, on Instagram at @the_artist_athlete, and the Patreon account is patreon.com/theartistathlete. Talk at you next week, friends, fans, and enemies. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi, I'm Katie Betts, and I'm the director of Shared Culture Concepts, which is a full-service marketing company for circus and performing arts. You can visit our website at www.sharedcultureconcepts.com. On the website, you can find a copy of our ebook, which covers basics of marketing, specifically for circus educators, coaches, studio owners, and circus artists.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete Podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So, if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swings and rope by night. I really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm on Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.